Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers that cover the NFL on a daily basis. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here's your host, Erin Summers.
Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. Erin Summers here alongside John DeShazier. We are talking after the Saints dropped the 2019 game against the Commanders Sunday. It was a close game. It came down to the very last few seconds there, JD. I mean, were there seconds on the clock? Have we figured out that?
Clock was empty. No seconds on the clock, so it literally came down to the absolute last play.
Yeah. Things changed significantly after the half. The Saints were actually down 17-0 in the third quarter. What was the biggest difference?
Well, they got more efficient on offense. The defense was able to get some stops, which actually it did in the first half. Even though it was 14-0, it seemed like it would be a lot more lopsided than that. But the Saints continued to get to the quarterback. They sacked Jaden Daniels 8 times in the game. I think 5 of those in the second quarter. And in addition to that, they got some life into him. I don't necessarily – I can't give it all to Spencer Rattler, and yet a lot of it's got to be attributable to him because that's when it started. Jake Haener had some buzzer's luck. I mean, he had a first down pass to Cedric Wilson that was called off because of a holding penalty. So you take that off the board. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who has been a great find for the Saints, dropped would have been a nice chunk play. So those two plays maybe get you in field goal range. At least one of them does, and maybe you get on the board. But so he had some buzzer's luck, and he took some sacks in the first half that didn't really look good. But Spencer Rattler came out, and they rallied around him, and then you get the trick play for the touchdown, which I think really juiced up the team, juiced up the fans, because the Saints needed something. Even though it was 1st and 10 at the 21 then, they hadn't done anything that make you feel like they might get in the end zone because it's been a struggle all day. But you pull off the trick play, you get the touchdown, and all of a sudden it's 17-7, and you're looking around and it's 5.5 minutes left in the third quarter, but you're like, you know what? Okay, this is actually doable because the defense has started to play pretty well. I mean, they'd held Washington to a field goal to open up the second half, so you felt like it was kind of doable. And the shame of it is that you just come up a little bit short. But I completely understand why Dan Rizzi and the team decided to go for 2 to try to win the game because you had to win it right there. I don't think the Saints were best positioned to win in overtime. If you go to overtime and it's a flip of the coin and you're saying, okay, which one of these offenses do I trust the most? Well, even though they sacked Jaden Daniels 8 times, Washington's offense probably would have been the one I would have said, if you give them one shot to get a touchdown, that's going to be the one to get the touchdown. Yeah. And so to go for 2 right there, I completely understand that. Plus, Alvin Kamara's out of the game with a groin injury. Marquez Valdez-Scantling has been monitored for a concussion. He came back in the game, but he wasn't probably 100% then. So, and the defense had been on the field forever. 74 plays, 40 minutes and 50 seconds, which is a ton for a defense. So they were probably gassed and really got fortunate. And I think that gas showed up some down the stretch because if Terry McLaurin doesn't drop a touchdown pass, or he's probably 5 yards behind the DB, then we're not talking about a game that goes down to the last play because Washington's up 2 touchdowns and it's a lot more out of hand than it was. So the defense needed that respite, and you needed to just try to win it right there. And unfortunately, they come up a little bit short. But I mean, it was really a riveting comeback because you just didn't feel like the Saints had any juice to them. They didn't seem to have any verve, no pop, no whatever it is you want to call it. It just seemed like, man, Washington's got this team in a sleeper hole, and they really are sleeping. It just didn't seem like it was going to go, especially after that first half. So the rally back then in the second half was, a real tribute to everybody, and especially, again, I've got to go back to Coach Rizzi to go into halftime and make a quarterback change. Yeah, it's pretty significant because a lot of times you'll just say, hey, I made a decision, I'm going to stay with it, I'm going to give Jake Haener time to give him more rope here and see if he can get into rhythm. And Coach Rizzi was like, we got to do something. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting something different. And so he was not insanity on that one. He was like, okay, we're going to change quarterback because on offense outside of the quarterback. There's nobody else you can change that's significant that's going to shake things up. So he changes the quarterback, and he gets the desired result, and you just don't get the win. But, everything else, the Saints have a lot of things to be proud about in that game.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that they go for two. It's something that Rizzi said they were going to do in an earlier game if they had scored. Yeah,
Rams.
He was like, yeah, we would have gone for two to try to win it there because the overtime rules in the regular season, they're kind of lopsided, just depending on the coin flip. So that's kind of tough to put it in, the hands of what happens with a coin flip. But in that first half, in Jake Haener, it wasn't necessarily his fault the way things were going. He was sacked 3 times. Rizzi said that there was a lot of mental errors in the pass pro. He said there was a lot of negative plays, and just players around Haener weren't playing up to par either. So the quarterback change, I think, is even more impressive that he did it, because it wasn't like Haener was doing anything wrong per se.
Yeah, I mean, when you evaluate it and you say, okay, they're a mental bust in pass pro, and the quarterback ends up on the ground, what everybody thinks is the quarterback.
Yeah.
And nobody's saying, well, they didn't have the right pickup, and they didn't have the right blitz pickup, or they didn't compensate for each other properly. And so you're just looking at the guy who's on the ground saying, man, why didn't he get rid of the ball? Why didn't he scramble? And so, from that standpoint, it's really tough for Jake Haener, because think about it. He's been here a couple of years. He watched Spencer Rattler start the first 3 games when Derek Carr was out. He finally gets his opportunity. He's got the offensive line intact that started the regular season. And that offensive line, in a lot of ways, doesn't play up to its capabilities. And so he ends up taking the brunt of it, because he's the guy who's on the ground getting sacked. And again, everybody's looking at him saying, what's wrong with him? And then you get to the second half, and the offensive line gets its stuff together. And now Spencer Rattler isn't on the ground.
Yeah.
And everybody's saying, well, that's why Spencer Rattler should have been out there, when, a lot of it is, all these players always say, and it's true, they're walking around with these shirts that say 111th. If you get one guy out of the 11 who doesn't do his job, then the whole thing goes to pot. And so they might have had 2 or 3 guys who didn't do their job in the first half. And it showed up, unfortunately, on Jake Haener's stats. But, he was a pro. Coach Rizzi said that, he went to the sideline. He was cheering on for his teammates. And, he was saying, hey, I know I didn't play as well as I want to, but I got to go back to the drawing board and get back on the horse and keep working. But, that first half, man, it was tough to watch. I'm sure it was tough on him, because you wait your whole life playing quarterback, saying, when I get to the NFL and if I start, man, I'm going to do this, that, and the third.
Yeah.
And you get your chance, and it just doesn't go your way. And so, he's probably, I know he's a confident guy, but I don't care how confident you are, when you have that kind of experience, it's going to shake you a little bit, and you got to bounce back from it.
Yeah, and it's good to hear that he was involved in the second half and supporting Spencer and trying to help in whatever way that he could, even though he was no longer on the field. Man, there were a couple plays, though, early defensively. I mean, really, I guess it was special teams. It was Peyton Turner with the penalty because of the illegal contact, and it was like he brushed his helmet, maybe.
They're saying he brushed the helmet with the back of his foot.
So whatever.
That's what they.
So yeah, the Commanders kick a field goal. There's this penalty called. They get another down, and then they eventually score a touchdown.
Yeah, that's tough, because Riz said he really wanted the league to look at that, because he didn't think it was a penalty. And if that's the case, I guess by the letter of the law, if indeed that's what happened, and how you can tell that happens in full speed, I don't know.
Yeah.
But if indeed that is what happened, then I guess by the letter of the law, because the center is an unprotected player, because he really, can't do anything to defend himself, I guess that would be a penalty. But man, that's tough, because you give up the touchdown instead of the field goal. That's a 4-point difference, and now the hole is even bigger, because at that point, Saints offense wasn't doing anything.
Right.
And so you don't get the feeling that, okay, they'll be able to bounce back from this once they score that touchdown. Look, when the Commanders go up 14-0 at halftime and get the ball coming out of the second half, you're like, this ain't going well. And this ain't going to go well, because you feel like, even though Jaden Daniels had been on the ground, when he was upright, he was converting out of 2nd and 18. And it's like, what's up with this dude? You can't get him on the ground enough to keep him off the scoreboard. And so it was like, that field goal that turns into a touchdown, it's like, my God, this is not going to go well. But if that's the case, then I guess it is a penalty. I guess it is a penalty. But man, that's a hard one to swallow if that's what happened. If he clears the guy, leaps and clears the guy, and the back of his foot hits the guy in the helmet, that's like, come on, man.
And it didn't even look, because I watched the replay, it didn't even look like it had affected the center. Like, he didn't move his head at all.
It doesn't affect him. I mean, it doesn't affect him at all. You're past him, and you're not stepping on him. You're not leveraging.
No.
So it doesn't affect the play whatsoever. So to have that and have those points taken off the board, and then they go down and score a touchdown instead of the field goal, that turns out to be significant in a game like this, because you get down to the stretch, and at that time, like I said, it looked like it was going to be really lopsided. But now you get to the end of the game, and it's like, but for those extra 4 points, where would this game be? Would the Saints be ahead? Would the Saints need to be going for 2 here to try to win the game? Or would the Saints have the lead here?
Yeah.
So all that what if, man, when you're talking about something like that, that's the kind of thing that makes coaches have gray hair and not sleep at night.
The Saints defensively, though, they had 8 season-high sacks, 5 in the first half. They did well, even though they were allowing the scores here and there by the Commanders. Over the last 5 games under Darren Rizzi, they've kept teams at 21 points or less, which is pretty dang good for a defense. That's
winnable in the NFL. That's about as much as you can ask in today's NFL, unless you're one of those elite defenses that's holding teams to 13 or 14, which there aren't many of those. Now, if you can hold a team to 20, 21, that's about where you want to be, because hopefully as an offense you can score your own 21, 24 to be able to win the game. You just, the NFL, every game is so tight now that you're just trying to hold it steady and be able to be the team that executes at the end. So to hold an offense like that to 20 is significant, and really to put it in this position with your 2 backup quarterbacks, because we still got to remember, you got your 2 backup quarterbacks playing. Alvin Kamara leaves the game after he catches the touchdown, because that's when he tweaked the groin. So that's in the third quarter. Valdez Scantling, is evaluated for a concussion, and I don't know how effective he would have been after that. But obviously he goes back into the game, and it's like, okay, how much does he have left in this game? So you're trying to navigate that, and we always have to continue to reflect on the fact that this team has not had its 2 starting receivers for, a month and a half now, it seems.
At least. I mean,
so now it's to be in position to win that game, and don't forget, Jaden Daniels ran for 66 yards, even with all the sacks. So it's like Jaden Daniels is some kind of freak of nature dude. To be as small as he is, you think the punishment would accumulate on him, but it doesn't seem to. But to be in a position to win the game was pretty phenomenal. And, all credit to the Saints to be able to put themselves in that position.
Yeah, I mean, it came up with Rizzi Monday when he was talking to the media about Cam Jordan, obviously a part of some of those sacks, another multi-sack game for him. So he's 28 now in his career. I think I saw he took down his 48th different quarterback, which is just insane when you think about it, that he's played that long and had that much success. He's got to get to 50, right? Like, we got to find some more quarterbacks for him.
Well, hopefully so. And I mean, Cam, Saints Hall of Famer, Saints Ring of Honor guy. He'll get that when he retires, and I think he will make the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm a little biased. I've seen his whole career, and 120 sacks. I think he's at 120 and a half. 120 isn't 150 or 170 or whatever, but Cam has been a complete defensive end, total. Plays the run, plays the pass. Does all the things that you want a defensive end to do. And really, he's been reinvigorated by getting more snaps, because, he was not shy about not being happy about having his playing time cut. And
he's not shy about anything, so he'll let you know.
And the fact of the matter is, if you're only playing 10, 15 snaps a game, it's tough to make an impact in 10, 15 snaps, because you can't find a rhythm. If every time you get out there and you rush the passer, or they have a running play, and you're out there for 2 plays, and then you're going back to the sideline. Well, how are you gonna get an offensive tackle and give him enough stuff to where you can set him up for later? You can't, because you're not out there enough. but now he's out there enough to be able to do that. And so, the old man chases down Jaden Daniels a couple times, and the defense gets 8 sacks, and it really was it was one of the better defensive performances by the Saints this season. Again, you hold that team to 20 points, and you sack the quarterback 8 times. A lot of times those are winning numbers.
Yeah.
Those are a lot of times.
We've said that a lot this season, though, when you look at the stats at the end of the game.
Yeah, there's been some times where they've been winning numbers. And there have been times where this defense, with a mobile quarterback like that, couldn't get him on the ground enough. Because you just roll back to the week before. They couldn't get Drew Lock on the ground enough. Mm-hmm. Now, they won the game 14-12 and against the Giants, but couldn't get him on the ground enough, and it takes a blocked field goal at the end of the game, basically, to win the game. Mm-hmm. So to be able to get Jaden Daniels on the ground 8 times and hold that team to 20 points, and it's like I can see why guys were just utterly, from what I'm told, just pissed in the locker room.
Yeah.
Because you're like, you only get so many chances in the NFL.
Yeah.
And when you get those chances, you want to be able to take advantage of them, and they just couldn't quite finish that one out.
Yeah, we're still in the hunt, though.
Yeah,
there is a chance still.
Yeah, I mean that says a lot about the NFC South division. That the Saints are 5-9 and still have a slim chance of getting in. You need a lot of stuff to work out in your favor, but yeah, the opportunity still is there. And look, if 8-9 is what gets you in, if 8-9 gets them in, I'm all for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't care how you get in, because once you get in, then everything is a reset. Then it's every man for himself. Everybody's even. I don't care where you go to play. The things that you do well, you hope will travel with you, because obviously, the Saints, well, if they win a division, hey, that's a home game.
Yeah, even at 8-9.
Yeah, even at 8-9. And look, we've seen wild card teams win games with losing records, because unfortunately, Seattle did it against the Saints. Mm-hmm. So it can happen. It can happen. So hopefully that's something to hang on to, as slim as those hopes are. So folks, if you're wanting the Saints to tank, number one, ain't going to happen, because you cannot look Tyrann Mathieu and Demario Davis and Cam Jordan in the eye, and Eric McCoy and Alvin Kamara in their face and say, okay, I want you guys to not play hard. I want you guys to quit on the season because this team wants a draft pick. I understand, fans. I get, your sentiments and such, but these guys are professionals. They do this for a living. They do this for their livelihood. They do this for their families. They have great pride. These guys don't hire personal people to give them, massages and acupuncture and all this stuff. They don't hire these people in order to quit on the season. They hire these people to stay in the best possible condition they can be in to play at peak performance in week 16 as we're going into. So don't you insult those guys when you say things like that. I understand you guys don't think you do, but you insult them when you insinuate that, hey, they shouldn't play hard, they should give up on the season. I used to kind of think like that. And Jim Moore, former Saints coach, was the guy who kind of put it in perspective for us, because he was like, winning in the NFL is hard. And these guys work long hours, and they do everything possible to get themselves physically ready to play a game. So to ask that guy to quit is not going to happen. That's pretty ridiculous. So I've adopted that stance. That's pretty ridiculous to ask these guys to not play hard.
Yeah, I mean, because you're doing that. You're putting your body through a lot, and it's a lot of work. The past 3 months, then you go back even further for training camp. I mean, they're not going to just say, all right, well, forget all that work I did. I'm just going to throw it out the window now.
I mean, Alvin Kamara's had a bad hand. He's had a bad hip. Now he's got a bad groin. He's had bad ribs. And you look at him and say, okay, Alvin, just shut it down and quit. Well, he's going to look at it like, and he's 50 yards away from his first 1,000-yard season, by the way. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, just shut it down and quit. And he's going to look at you like, F you. Yeah. and Derek Carr, I know Derek Carr is polarizing here, but Derek Carr has had the kinds of injuries that mere mortals Derek Carr had his 3rd concussion with the Saints. Mm-hmm. He had the AC joint injury last year. He had rib injuries last year. And Derek Carr has not ever failed to play whenever he could. And that tells you that guy really loves what he's doing. He cares about what he's doing. So and I say I understand what you're saying. I don't understand what you're saying because I don't. Because nobody goes to your job and tells you to quit. So you shouldn't go to their job and tell them to quit.
They might want someone to tell them to stop working. Some days I feel like that.
If you want to quit your job, just text me, DM me. I'll come to your boss and I'll tell you, hey, he needs to quit. You need to quit, and you need to fire him, and then you'll see how it feels, I guess.
No, I'm not saying I want to quit. I'm just saying some days I could use a little break. You mentioned Alvin Kamara, and he had another touchdown reception from Cedric Wilson, of all people. Never knew that was in him. Did not expect that one at all. But AK, that's his 25th career touchdown reception. He has 60 rushing, so he's the fourth player to ever have 25 and 50. Marshall Faulk, Lenny Moore, and then Christian McCaffrey are the other three in the league. So he's continuing to, as you said, he's going towards that 1,000-yard season, just rushing. But he's continuing, even in his age, even through the injuries, to break records and make stuff happen. And I expect to see him back on the field this year, even with the groin injury he's dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a guy who's going to be back out there, it's going to be Alvin. He takes great care of himself physically. He's got a team of people who help him take care of himself physically. So I expect him to be back out there, if not Monday night against Green Bay, and that might happen because you get the bonus day because it's a Monday night game. Certainly, I expect him out there the next game, home against the Raiders at worst.
Yeah, I mean, great catch, but you got to give props to Cedric Wilson on the throw.
I can't imagine a more difficult thing to do in the NFL than to be a non-quarterback and they dial up a play and say, okay, we're going to lateral it to you, and we need you to roll out. We need you on the left side, on the left hash, but we need you to throw it back over to the right hash to a guy who's running full speed, and we need you to hit him in stride. And this is going to be the one chance you get to do this, because once we pull this out of the playbook, we ain't going to be able to use it again.
Yeah.
And so we need you to make this count when you get it. And to Cedric Wilson Jr.'s credit, my God, it was a fantastic throw. Now, a great catch by Alvin, a one-handed catch. But, I mean, to dial it up and to throw it. And Riz said he hit it in practice, and they were like, you know what, he did it so well in practice, we wonder if he's going to be able to do this in the game. Well, it couldn't have been much better than that in practice.
Yeah.
Because it was perfect. And to be able to do it when it counts, when there's not a pseudo pass rush trying to get to you.
Like real people, big people running at you fast.
Real big dudes trying to get to you. And to have that patience to not eat it and say, you know what, I'm out here, the rush is coming, let me tuck it and run. But to stand back there and have that patience and to throw a rope that's right on time, to hit him in stride, it was phenomenal. I can't imagine many more difficult plays in the NFL.
Yeah, it was, as you said, it was impressive, and it was that juice that the team needed. A crazy play, you call it, at a situation where it was.
Yes, first and 10 at the 21, so and
you had multiple opportunities.
Yeah.
He went for it and got that 21-yard touchdown. Great play call. They've been working on it for a couple weeks, Riz said, and finally decided to go for it when they needed something big like that. Late game execution by Spencer Rattler, though, driving the team down the field, and then the touchdown to Foster Moreau. He just seems like he's a gamer. Every time you see him, he makes stuff happen.
Well, great assistance on that drive, but from Kendre Miller, who ran really hard, ran over a dude on I think 17-yard run in that drive. But Rattler, I think obviously the experience you gained from starting those three games, even though he didn't win, and even though he got pulled from the last one, as a matter of fact, but to see it in live action and to see the speed of the game, and get a chance to then kind of marinate in and say, okay, if I had a chance to do it again, this is the way I do it. Or, I know they're going to blitz me, so I know where my reads are and those kinds of things. And to see him do that, because I think he had a 31-yarder to MVS where he gets crushed when he throws it. But he stepped up, he stood in, he found MVS deep down the field, and he let it rip. And, it ends up being a throw that's in a little bit of traffic, so Marquez has to help him out. But, man, did he throw it. And it was like, I don't see him making that throw in the first 3 starts that he makes. So, you just see that he's gained the confidence from playing. And, I thought it was going to be a big deal that he didn't get a whole lot of snaps in practice because the first they shared snaps, I guess, before Jake Hayner took over. But I guess the previous experience, again, he had 3 weeks where he started where he got the lion's share. He knows the playbook better, obviously. And so to get out there and to have, the confidence to stay in it and then to be able to execute because, you're down 17-0. Washington knows you got to throw it some. They know you got to throw it.
Yeah.
And they've already sacked the other guy 3 times. Now, the offensive line does play better. And then you get a running game going with Kendre Miller. But, man, it's tough to come off the bench and do what Spencer Rattler did.
Yeah, he's somebody that we've seen, even in training camp, you saw flashes of his ability, his athleticism, the deep ball that he can throw. And it's just kind of the consistency. Yeah. And it's going to come with experience, seeing different defenses, seeing, in-game situations, time on the clock. Full speed, really, is a big part of it, too. You can only practice so many aspects of it. You got to kind of get out there and see it. So I think him coming in and playing the way he did was obviously good for the team as well. Man, we're looking forward. We got this Green Bay Packers game Monday night. It's probably going to be cold. It will be cold.
No probably.
They are just coming off a huge win over Seattle. If anybody was watching, it was last night, Sunday night's game. They won 30-13. They had 7 sacks against the Seahawks. They're playing pretty well.
That's a good team. That's a team that people believe can, maybe get to the NFC Championship game, maybe even go to the Super Bowl from the NFC. So that's a team that's going to be difficult to deal with, and then you're on the road, and then it's you got to deal with the elements. And I understand it's kind of a mind over matter thing, but
cold is cold.
Yeah, cold is cold.
I can't mentally get around that.
Yeah, when you play in a dome, and I think the coldest game the Saints have played so far was the Giants game, and it wasn't really cold. It was like 55 or whatever, so it wasn't really cold. So you go to Green Bay, and I think I looked at the preliminary forecast. I looked like last week, looked at the 10-day forecast, and I think it was like the high was going to be 32 that day. But once the sun goes down and the wind starts blowing and it's 20 degrees.
It's a night game.
Yeah, and it's 20 degrees and all that kind of stuff. It kind of makes a difference. And the possibility that you're out there with a quarterback who we don't know how functional Derek Carr's left hand is if he plays.
Yeah.
Now, the only thing he's missing is to go through a complete practice because that's the last step of protocol. And Coach Rizzi said basically it's kind of a formality. Once he can get out there and practice, he'll go out there and practice. That's why they hadn't put him on injured reserve. So if he can practice this week, if he can practice full, then he's going to play. But how functional is that left hand going to be? Because yesterday it didn't look very functional. It was. I don't know if that's a cast, a club, whatever it was on it, but I mean, it wasn't very functional yesterday. So probably a good idea to hold him out the game. But if he can play, we know Derek Carr is going to play. Now the benefit is, or if there's I won't say benefit. The plus side is if he can't play, Spencer Rattler comes in with some momentum. I don't know how much that translates against a really good Green Bay team on the road, but you got a guy who his confidence should be up. The offense's confidence in him should be up. And so you hope to get an even better performance out of him for 4 quarters because, it's easy to say if the Saints had that kind of play for 4 quarters on Sunday, they would have won the game. We don't know what would happen. Maybe if he plays the first 2 quarters, he plays that well, and then Washington adapts in the second half. We don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know until you know. And so hopefully he can put together a good 4 quarters if it's him.
Yeah, I was like, JD's already naming our quarterback for Monday.
I'm just saying if it's him, then, there's something to build on there, something really good to go off.
Yeah, Coach Riz said that they are going to wait to name who that starter is going to be. They're going to see how Derek Carr progresses. As you mentioned, he's technically still in concussion protocol, but it is based off of how he is healing from that left hand injury. Again, not his throwing arm, so that's part of it, but heck, you can't fall on it again if it's broken like that.
No, you can't fall on it. And look, you can't, I don't know how effectively you can take snaps if you got that big thing on your hand, which I would assume, if he's going to play, they would downsize to something that's a little bit more functional.
Yeah.
You've got to, but as
you'd have to be under center the whole time.
Yeah, but no, you can't be under center if your hand's messed up. you can't take that hard snap. So it'll probably be and look, a lot of teams play out of the shotgun a lot anyway. But there are situations where you kind of do need to be under center. If it's 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 and you want to get that yard, you kind of need the guy under center. And a lot of things you kind of give away because he can't be under center. And you get him out there, and as you mentioned, he can't afford to fall on that hand on a sack. Mm-hmm. So you got to be able to keep him clean. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it when you're talking about putting a guy out there with an injury that everybody knows about. And that's not to say Green Bay would go after it. That's just a natural progression of what happens when you hit the quarterback and he falls. He's going to brace himself when he falls, and if he braces himself incorrectly, which you hope he doesn't, but that thing's got to sting some. It's got to hurt.
Mm-hmm. Unless you're like me and you have slow reflexes and you forget to catch yourself and then you fall.
Well, then you fall and then you hit your head and you get a concussion. So you don't want that either.
Did we miss anything from Sunday?
No, I don't think we did. I mean, like I said, we probably should give a little bit more shine to Kendre Miller because Kendre really ran well in the second half, ran hard, showed some speed, power, all the things that the Saints expected to see when they drafted him. And, Coach Rizzi has said it time and time and time again. And even before then, former Coach Dennis Allen said it. He's just got to stay healthy. He's got to stay healthy. If he's healthy and he knows the plays, then you've got a guy who can really give you a great change of pace, and a guy when you look at him, you say, you know what's the future of the Saints running back room going to look like? Mm-hmm. You don't have to squint too hard when you look at him and say, you know what, this guy could be the future as the Saints running back if he can stay healthy.
Sure.
And that's easy for me to say. I'm sitting around in a chair watching the game. Ain't nobody hitting me. But if he's just got to be able to stay healthy, and hopefully he can.
Yeah. Man, I'm thinking about you in Green Bay Monday night. Like, I know you're in the press box, but you're outside a little bit.
Trust me. Look, folks, I will never, as somebody who covers the team, complain about the weather because I'm inside.
Yeah.
I'm inside. And what I got to do outside, so I'll do a little pregame hit, and we'll walk to, we'll go to the stadium, and we might have to be outside 20, 30 minutes. But look, that is nothing. And then I get to go and sit in the press box, and even though I don't drink coffee, if it's cold, I will drink some to stay warm. And, so I got all the creature habits and all the pleasures of being at an NFL game and not having to be the one on the field and be cold. So, it's fantastic for me. One way or the other. I always say I'm undefeated when it comes to NFL games.
True. We always win. JD, thank you so much. I want to give a shout out to a lot of our players that have just been out in the community, over Thanksgiving, heading into Christmas, doing a lot for different families. And, even our players that have been hurt. Bub Means was out at an event recently. Derek Carr, Taysom Hill showed up. And you have a lot of excuses that you could give when you're hurt and you're dealing with things, and they're not. And they're still showing up. And it's just a testament to the character of the players we have in this locker room and how much they care about New Orleans.
Yeah, I can't speak to other teams in locker rooms because I don't know those teams in locker rooms, obviously. But our players, the Saints players, have really always dug deep into the community, and a lot of that goes to the people who kind of coordinate those things for them. Alicia Broussard, Sheridan, and I mean they really get out into the community and involve themselves, and I can see why. I mean, people always say, the team kind of is woven into the city, and the city's woven into the team, and that's why. I mean, these guys are parts of New Orleans. They really dig in and give to the community, and if we can go from top to bottom, from the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee Cam Jordan, all the way down to, as you just mentioned, Bub Means, who was injured when he went out. These guys really give back to the community, and it's impressive to see. Yeah,
it is. And I think obviously a lot of it starts with Mrs. Benson and her generosity as well. So we appreciate that from the owner here. JD, thank you for your insight into this one, and let's just stick behind the team.
Yeah, hey, there's still a chance.
There is.
So you're saying there's a chance? Yes, there is a chance.
Definitely. Well, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints Podcast.